Hi, this is Melinda, and you're listening to the Haitian Freethinkers Radio Show.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Reggie, and you are listening to the Haitian Freethinkers Show. Like Melinda just told you, today is Thursday, August 11, 2016, and I'm joined by a very special guest who's on the line right now, but I want to make some announcements before we start the show. So normally I usually use Wherever I Go by Michael Bourne, which is a nice song by this young Haitian DJ, but I want to try to get some copyright-free music. So if you're out there and you want to send me some music that belongs to you, I would appreciate it. I already have permission from one individual, actually two guys, but I want to do the right thing. So I love that song, but I hit him up on Twitter to see if he could, give me permission, but we'll see how that goes. And I'm really excited to have Alex on the line with me, and we're going to talk about everything from theology to tea. So if you want to call, the guest calling number, it is 657-383-1619. Once again, that's 657-383-1619. Just hit the number 1, and then I'll see your number pop up. I will call you out by your area code. You can speak to myself or Alex, and we'll go from there. So without any further ado, I'll let Alex introduce himself.
Okay, thank you, Reggie, and thank you to the staff for allowing me to be here this evening. My name is Alex Verneret. I am a professional speaker with the John Maxwell Team, also certified with Les Brown Enterprises. I also speak primarily for American Express, but also different businesses. As a speaker, I also serve as a preacher in my local church and in churches in the metro Atlanta area. I'm passionate about people, adding value to people, especially at times like this where we see what's going on with the world and politics and just everything in general. I just really live to add value to other people. So I hope that during this interview I could add some type of value to all the listeners today. Thank you for having me.
Okay, there it is, plain and simple. My normal co-host is James. I believe he's on the line. James, are you on?
Yes, I am. How y'all guys doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
Okay, cool. Alex, let me tell you a little bit of history of how I learned about Alex. So Alex's parents, and I guess by extension Alex, is relatives of my half-sister, and she invited his parents over last December, I think it was. And then myself, Valerie, and the kids, we went over to Alex's house to have a wonderful, I think it was Christmas dinner. We met his sister and his now fiance, and Frankie, I think his name is, and his sister. So we had a good time. And his parents have a church nearby, which I went to visit one time. And they spoke very highly of Alex, basically, this dude is the man. He's like a prodigy, and he has a lot of things going for himself, including, speaking at some illustrious sounding, corporations or groups. So I wanted to get a chance to talk to him, and so I was on Facebook the other day, and I saw Alex was talking about Theasoc, if you're familiar with that. As a lot of us Haitians are, and other people from the islands. And so I said, okay, well, let me see if I can get in touch with him, because I know everybody's busy doing their thing. So he was gracious enough to accept the invitation onto the show. And I told him a little bit about us. And lo and behold, they're going to have, Alex is going to be part of a revival, which I'm going to let him tell you guys more about. And unfortunately, I will not be able to join because I'll be working, but it sounds like the kind of thing that I usually try to take part in. So I've never really spoken to Alex at length, so this is like a learning experience for me, so hopefully it is the same for him, to learn about what it is that the Les Brown speaking thing is all about and the other, John Maxwell. How did you get into those speaking engagements, and what exactly are those?
Oh, yeah, no problem. Well, as far as the Les Brown certification, for those of you guys who do not know Les Brown is one of the top 5 speakers of all time. He is an incredible speaker, and growing up, I played football. And one of the things I always did is that before a football game, I would listen to one of his speeches as a way of motivating myself so that I can push past barriers during the game. And in constantly listening to him, I developed an appreciation for speakers and public speaking. I never really saw myself doing this as a career, but as I was working for American Express, I constantly found people approaching me within the company, asking me for advice, asking me to train them on things that I wasn't even too sure about myself. And so as I noticed that people kept asking me for help and to speak with them about certain things, I realized that maybe this was a gift and that I should pursue it further. So in my pursuit of it, I started speaking more at the church, just helping out with the young adults and trying to help them keep their minds focused. Of course, I got certified by Les Brown. I also became a part of the John Maxwell Team. For those of you who do not know, John Maxwell is the #1 leadership guru in the world by most publications. And with him, I am a coach. So I do life coaching, but primarily business coaching. I am a trainer, so I train other leaders. Right now I'm working with 6 businesses, training managers, staff, and even executives in the aspect of leadership. And I am also a speaker. So for motivational speaking, I get to come to different banquets, ceremonies, high schools, and to speak motivationally to hopefully ignite a fire in whoever's there so they can accomplish the best that they have for themselves.
I'm impressed. I Googled Les Brown first, then John Maxwell. Les Brown, I seen his face before. I never heard him speak, not that I can recall. John Maxwell, I'm not too familiar with him, but it's always good to be doing that which you're passionate about, and so you've parlayed that into, I guess, a career, and it ties to your, I guess, religious aspirations, and so you use it to preach. But you did say you're not officially a pastor, correct?
Oh, yes, exactly. I'm not a pastor.
What do you want to be a pastor?
No, to be honest, I've actually never wanted to even preach. So the idea of being a pastor is not something that's necessarily something that I'm interested in. Preaching as far as church is just from noticing certain issues and things that I would like to see changed, and just kind of stepping up into the moment, and that's what caused me to start preaching. But if I can avoid it, I will not be a pastor.
Okay, that's interesting. What exactly is preaching? Because I'm big on definition. I mean, a lot of us probably know what it is, but just to be on the safe side, when you say preaching, what do you mean?
Well, preaching is that on a weekly basis, we have something called a church service. Basically, a church service is where a group of believers gather into a building, and we sing songs to worship God together in unison, and we have a sermon. The sermon is meant to hopefully encourage the public so that when they're not in church, they can continue serving God outside of the 4 walls of the church. And so what preaching is being the person who actually stands up there to speak to the public on a variety of subjects, but the end objective is always to assure that the public leaves feeling encouraged or challenged to help them in their walk with God.
Okay. And tell us a little bit more about the local church that, I think it's your family church, correct?
Yeah, my father's the pastor.
Okay, so Blood Price Church is called, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your father told me about how you guys moved from, I think, New Jersey and came to Georgia. I think you were part of another church for a while. I want to say in Marietta, but then eventually branched out here in the Lawrenceville area where I live. And can you tell us a little bit more about, the process of starting a church from scratch? Because I can imagine how it's a little bit challenging. Even though we live in a religious culture, but having to do a Haitian church.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're right completely. It's definitely challenging. When my father moved here, he got his master's degree in biblical studies while he was living in New Jersey, but he never wanted to be a pastor. He wanted to just have the knowledge to maybe teach in the capacity of a Sunday school teacher. But our senior pastor at the time came to him and told him that he felt a calling over my father's life for him to become a pastor. And so before we moved to Georgia, my father became a pastor. But when we moved to Georgia, he wasn't looking to open up a church. He was looking to be an assistant at another church. And so when we came to Georgia, we visited other assemblies, and for a while we were trying our best to integrate ourselves within those assemblies. But at that particular time, there was a lack of a Haitian presence. It was 16 years ago. So it wasn't as developed as far as the Haitian community. And because of that, some of the churches, there wasn't too much diversity with our choices in where we would worship. And so there were just certain things that we weren't necessarily comfortable with, and my father didn't necessarily agree with. And so instead of staying and causing an issue, he accepted the call to open up his own ministry, and we ended up starting it off in the basement of the house. And one way or the other, people started hearing about us and coming to the basement until we became too large for the basement, and we had to move out and actually find a centralized location.
And when did you guys find that centralized location?
Well, we came to Georgia in September of 2000. I believe by December 2001, we actually moved into a location, Tabernacle International Church in Lawrenceville, Georgia. They provided us a small room that could fit about 200 people for us to start worshiping there. And then after we outgrew the room, that's where we moved on to another location. And then we outgrew that location, which now brings us to our current location.
Wow, that's rapid growth if it's about the first location within about a year of moving to Georgia. So I think that's pretty impressive. And which denomination do you and your parents belong to?
Well, we like to consider ourselves non-denominational. We come from a Pentecostal background, but as far as the church, we consider ourselves non-denominational.
Okay, cool. I didn't know that your father had a master's in was it biblical? What's your official term?
Yeah, biblical studies.
Biblical studies. What does that mean exactly? A person with a master's in biblical studies means that they know the Bible inside out. Is that what it means essentially?
Not necessarily. The funny thing about Bible school is that Bible school doesn't necessarily teach you the Bible per se. What Bible school actually does is that it teaches you everything around the Bible so that you can have proper context when reading the Bible. Because as far as learning the Bible, you have to read that for yourself. But as far as context, historical documentation, dates, maps, things of that nature, those are also very important, especially when pastoring, because you can read a passage in the Bible, but if you don't understand the context, you can take that one passage and completely lead astray an entire church. So it was very important that he learned the actual historical context, who wrote it, what was going on in those times, things of that nature. And, of course, while doing the biblical studies, he also spent a year emphasizing on business administration so that he could learn how to operate a church and things like that. But that's mainly what the biblical studies is about.
Okay. So while he was doing his studies and obviously growing up, with him being very religious, was there any, pressure for you to follow in his footsteps?
It's funny. It's funny, Reggie, that you say that, because I actually did not have any pressure. The thing is that, especially in churches, our epistemology, we kind of understand that the preacher's son is either very spiritual or he is the complete opposite of what you want to be. And I was actually the complete opposite. So I was in the church. I played the keyboard out of loyalty for my father, but he always knew that my faith was not necessarily in that place. And so I didn't have any pressure as far as to follow his footsteps. The only pressure that I felt was to contribute somehow, and I did that by playing the piano for the ministry. But I was never pressured into preaching or anything of that nature. Okay.
Because from my experience, there's definitely a stigma from the children of high-ranking members or pastors, and it's usually, from my perspective, very pressure-based. There's an expectation for them to, like you said, either follow or either rebel. And, I've always been interested to find out, somebody's perspective who's been in that situation. So that's good. They did seem to be very understanding and open, and they're very good communicators. Something that I don't think I experienced too much in my household, especially from my stepfather. So that's good. Would you say that your father is Americanized, or you think that he's always kind of been that guy? And your mom too?
Yeah, they're not fully Americanized, but it's funny. It's like once he started hitting around the 60 mark, he's gotten more Americanized. I believe that the church where we were at in New Jersey had a very different culture than our church now. It was very regimented. Women don't braid your hair. No makeup. No this, no that. It was very regimented. And when we came to Georgia, of course, initially those force of habits start to display, but after a while, it just, I noticed that he just became more and more understanding, and he's constantly growing in that, constantly challenging himself, constantly reading, and just looking for new ways to be effective in 2016, because what was effective, in the 90s is not effective anymore. So I feel like it's something that he's growing in, and he's come quite far over the past couple of years.
Okay, that's really good to hear. I want to remind everybody once again that you are listening to the Haitian Free Thinkers Radio Show. My name is Reggie. My co-host James is on the line. Where you're talking to Alex tonight. He's our special guest. If you want to call in to the show, you can dial 657-383-1619. Once again, that's 657-383-1619. This show is currently live, but if for some reason that you missed the show, you can catch the show on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spreaker Radio, And those are the places that you can get all the past shows. This is show number 76. So there's 75 shows that you need to catch up on. So Alex is a guy that I found very interesting. So here we are talking live here. So if you want to give him a call, this is the time to do so. Do you have any thoughts or questions, James?
Oh yeah, I did want to ask him since since he's the preacher's child and everything. Was he coming up as a kid? Were you kind of mischievous? You know what they say sometimes about the preacher's kid. It's like a little running joke in the church.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I definitely was. I found pleasure in doing the opposite of what I was told. And a lot of that stems from watching, because there's one thing when you're a church member, and there's a different aspect when you're actually one of the quote-unquote high-ranking people in the church, because you see how some people act behind the scenes. And so to hear about people gossiping about my father, or, to see a preacher one way on stage and one way off stage, it really turned me off. And so I lived my life out of a consciousness of avoiding being like them. And so I tried my best to do everything opposite of what they were doing. So I was extremely mischievous, and I was quite the rebel.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You have any other questions, James?
Not right now. Some more come to me though.
Okay, so we are a group of Haitian Free Thinkers. So Haitian Free Thinkers is a group that I started back in 2012, January 12, 2012, to be more specific. And I started the group basically to see how many secular Haitians I can find. I myself, I'm an atheist. And I'm an atheist because, primarily because I read the Bible and I researched it. So here we are, 4 years, and we have this radio show. And I remember when your father came over and your mom came over, I mean, they were so nice. They brought gifts, and they were inviting us to the church. And so I felt really, this is the part of the show. I want to let everybody know, if you're listening live and you don't understand Creole, you're going to have to learn something, because I wanted to, practice. So I felt really gêné to be like, oh, that's really nice and everything. And I personally don't mind visiting churches. It's just that there's this concern that I have all the time that, if I tell someone who's very religious that I'm not religious, that they're going to turn sour on me. So I was very, very concerned about that. So I was like, oh, man, that's just such a shame. And I wanted Haitian Free Thinkers, or at least myself, Reggie, to try to be like an ambassador or a bridge to kind of like help see if I can improve that situation where people who are secular like myself and James and other members of the group don't have to feel bad about saying what it is that they believe or do not believe. So that's how I felt when I first met your parents. And eventually I went to the church one Sunday, and I haven't been to church in a while, mostly because of my schedule, and plus we moved to Georgia from Florida a couple of years ago now, and just obviously don't go to church. But there was a lot of things I had to relearn based on when I used to go to church a few years ago. And one of the things I loved was going to the youth side to do Bible study or whatever. And I don't know the name of the gentleman, but there's the Bible study, the youth guy. He's from Boston, and I remember he was talking to the kids, and I remember the look on their faces and everything, and I just wanted to like observe and absorb and see what the church was all about. That day, you were not present. Your sister wasn't there, so I was one of the. I really didn't know too many people besides your parents. So, but it was very nice. It was a classic, I guess, church session, but I had to leave a little bit early because I had to go to work. But that's been my experience so far. So, have you met any Haitians that are atheists, Alex?
Oh yeah, definitely. Not too many, but more so as of lately. As our Haitian community is growing in Georgia, we've met a couple. We've had some come by the church. Actually, I believe it was about 2 weeks ago. I was speaking for Verizon, and one of the gentlemen who's in their leadership team is Haitian, who is actually an atheist. And so we did have a short conversation. Just a friendly conversation. I got to know him, but I have come across quite a bit of atheists as of lately.
That's interesting. I wish I could get in contact with all these individuals, but
I was just thinking the same thing.
I became an atheist in August of 2009. Officially, I didn't know what an atheist was until I was in my late 20s. I have my personal reasons, but based on what you told me, it seems like, some people, sometimes they feel like it's like this new thing. It's like this sad, chic, almost like, almost rebellious type of thing. But I don't think it necessarily is. But though, based on what your experiences have been with these other Haitian atheists, why do they tell you that they don't believe?
Most people that I've met who told me that they didn't believe, there was a story behind it. There was an experience. For some people, it could have been an experience at a church. Me personally, I was very close to declaring myself an atheist at one point in time when I was 19 years old. So sometimes there's negative experiences within the church. For some people it is, as far as studying when a book in the Bible was written, and then they say, well, why was it written 30 years after the event actually took place? How do we know it's true? So a lot of people have different reasons, but the most compelling reason that I've heard is usually from some type of church hurt, being in a church where people mistreat them or something happens, and then it kind of sends them into a path of studying, and then they just decide, maybe this is not for me.
Okay, that sounds pretty reasonable, pretty popular. Again, for those of you who are listening live, this is a special show. Alex Verneret is on the Haitian Free Thinkers Radio Show. The guest call-in number is 657-383-1619. Once again, 657-383-1619. Just call. You can listen. Press 1 if you want to speak to myself or our special guest, Alex, here. And,
I have a question.
It's been a great... Sure.
Alex, if you don't mind me asking, what was it that almost made you declare being an atheist, and what was it that, I guess, changed your mind or whatever?
Well, yeah, no problem. Honestly, it wasn't one particular action, but like I was saying earlier, being a pastor's son, being in the background, I would see preachers, who were sometimes extremely spiritual on stage, and then I would get a chance to see them off stage. I've grown to respect my father tremendously because to me, I've seen him the same way off stage that he is on stage. Like what Reggie's saying about his kindness, that's something that everybody says. He is that type of person off stage, on stage. What you see is what you get. But I saw so many other speakers and other preachers who were different on stage and off stage. And there was one particular time where we had a choir director at our church who wanted me to date her daughter. And because I wasn't interested in her daughter, she kind of started spreading rumors about me, and a lot of people bad talking me, and I just said I didn't want to be a part of that group of people anymore. And so, of course, growing up, I didn't really have a chance to accept faith for myself. I was conditioned, to accept faith. I wasn't told if I had a choice. This is what I grew up to know. So I was questioning a lot of things, and I said, this is not for me. I don't want to be a part of this group of people. I'm not even sure if this thing is real or not. I don't want to be wasting my time. But then what ended up bringing me to Jesus was I was playing football in a college out in Minnesota, playing collegiate football, and I had a head injury. And in the head injury, I was asked to possibly go through surgery. I decided not to go through surgery, but I was told that there could be some complications down the road. And so I did not want to go through surgery because they were speaking about speech impediments and just having different mental issues down the line. So in opting not to take the surgery, I understood that I was of major risk of, possibly passing away. And so that kind of happened, and I still didn't believe, but it was a preacher who I did not know who called me up on stage in front of the entire church, and I didn't tell many people what was going on. It was just my then girlfriend, my sister, and my best friend who knew what was going on. And the preacher called me out in front of the entire church, and he said, God said he's going to heal you. Most of the church had no clue that anything was even wrong with me. So when he said that, I was just kind of, I kind of played it off. But then when I realized that I was actually healed, I went and got an MRI done by a neurologist. And when I realized that I no longer had any issues as far as punctured veins in my brain, it made me stop and say, there's something behind this. And that was kind of my first time seeing that, okay, maybe this faith thing is not a gimmick or a game to make money. So that's kind of what led me down the path of, instead of thinking everything is always wrong, let me actually study. And I took theology at Liberty University and started studying more until I became a full-fledged believer.
Okay. Thank you for answering that question.
Thank you.
Excellent. Again, great show. If you wish to call in, 657-383-1619. Don't miss out on this. Good segue, because I'll tell you a little bit about the video that I saw Alex talking on that will tie into what it is that he just said about how he reaffirmed, I guess, his faith. But first, a little voice intro from our friend Javon from Jamaica. So listen to this real quick.
Hey, this is Javon from Jamaica, and you are listening to the Haitian Free Thinkers Radio Show.
Javon is one of the, original members of Haitian Free Thinkers, and he sent that one in, and I want to thank him. I promised him and some of the other people who made voice intros that I'd do a little something for him. But, that was an interesting story. And when I was on Facebook a couple of days ago, I saw Alex talking about l'Evangile and how he made an analogy with l'Evangile and the Théâtre. So instead of paraphrasing, I'm going to let Alex explain what he was saying and how he ties in it to the religion.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, well, in the video that you saw, I was preaching at a church, Good Samaritan Haitian Alliance Church in Lawrenceville, and Haitian nous compte théâtre. Théâtre is one of the nastiest things I think ever created, and so I was giving an analogy of, when I was growing up, there was one time that I was sick, and I asked my mom, why didn't she ever put sugar, in the théâtre? Because she always puts lemon and salt. And so I asked her, why didn't she put sugar? Because, in my mind, the associé, it has the healing properties. It's not the salt. It's not the lemon. So if you just put the sugar in the SOC, I should still be able to feel the effects of the medicine. But she was explaining to me that the fever won't drop if I put sugar in it, and that in order for the fever to drop, she has to give me the medicine as it is. And so I made the analogy that in order for the gospel to have the power that it's supposed to have, we must preach the original gospel, because I feel like, in modern times, the Bible is becoming less popular as far as the source of Christianity. And a lot of times we're using different things like society or, pressures from outside forces or other religions to dictate what it is to be a Christian in 2016.
Okay, so with the analogy, l'Évangile, for those who don't know, is the gospel. That's in Creole. So is TSOC being very, what's the proper term to use? Very bitter, very not tasting. Is that what you associate the gospel with? And if so, why?
Okay, well, no, I don't associate it as far as bitter. I don't believe the gospel to be bitter. But the thing about TSOC, the reason why I feel like it could associate with the gospel is more because it medicates. It treats, in my opinion, spiritual sickness. And so the TSOC, because it treats the body, and so that's kind of the comparative point as far as it being something that can help treat illness. And so that's why I associated it. Of course, in treating an illness, there are some things that you might not necessarily like. Just like TSOC, you might not like the way it tastes, but you understand that it's necessary in order for you to get to that next level. And so I do feel like sometimes the gospel, you may not have what you necessarily want, but as a believer, I still hold on to my faith even in those times, because I know that's what's best for me.
Okay, and what exactly is spiritual sickness?
I look at spiritual sickness as when you are doing something that in your heart, your faith contradicts. So, for example, in our Christian faith, we believe in saving yourself for marriage and not fornicating. And I know believers who, especially male believers, who struggle with that incredibly. They don't want to fornicate. Of course, they make the statement that they don't want to, but it's just too difficult, and sometimes the temptation is too high. And so I consider that a spiritual sickness, where you're dealing with something that contradicts what it looks like to be a healthy Christian, which we get that from the Bible.
And if a person, by fornicating, I'm assuming you mean to have sex before marriage?
Yes.
So if a person has sex before marriage, then what?
Then what, in what sense?
If a person chooses to have sex before marriage, how does that affect their l'Évangile, their walk with Jesus, or their religion?
Well, it goes against, the commandments of the Bible. And so if you are fornicating, in our faith, we are taught that Jesus is not just a part of our lives, he is all of our lives. And so if I do something that contradicts his teaching, I am not living my life for him. I may be living my life for me or any other thing. And so if we are fornicating, it is that we are not living our lives completely for God as we are supposed to.
Okay. One of the things that I've always wanted to discuss with people that are willing to discuss it is, from my experience, one of the many, many problems that I have with religion in general, but specifically Christianity, especially when it relates to us as Haitian people. And this started for me in middle school when I met my first Muslim. He was Haitian, and he basically asked me, like, why are you why are you Christian when you know that it was the Christians that basically brought us from Africa and put us in slavery? And he was saying, like, why are you worshiping the white God? Basically, he was his name was Luigi. He was a cool cat, man. Luigi was what ended up being a more of Nation of Islam type of Muslim. So that was the first little dime that he dropped on me. And man, he used to we talked like a lot, and that's one of the first challenges that I don't know how the average Haitian who knows, the bare minimum about our history is able to overcome and still remain a Christian. So I'm asking you, do you think about, our history as a Haitian people and how you are able to tie that with, Christianity?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was one of the things that really caused issue for me, especially when I thought about being an atheist. And it took me some time to get past because I did feel like a lot of the passages were whitewashed. And, of course, they use slavery as a form of control so that we would not seek revenge and we would not rebel and things of that nature. So I did study that, and I had some doubts because of it, but in being in the church, I noticed that there are still some residue from those type of social conditionings, because even in the black church, a lot of time the theme of it is sanctification, which is holiness, as far as like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. And some of the white churches who are, using Christianity are using it more for, God is going to bless you and God is going to increase you. So even in the church, you still kind of see the effects of what's happened many years ago. So I definitely do see why that could be a concern of yours.
I have a question
Okay.
also, another question.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Alex, have you heard of I'm pretty sure you heard of the 42 principles of Ma'at, Egyptian, from Egypt. It was like basically like 42.
I'm not too familiar.
It's like instead of 10 commandments, it was 42 commandments of Egyptian laws and stuff like that they had, and they sound similar to the 10 commandments, and they were around like 1,000 years or so before the 10 commandments, and that's the type of thing that I look into when I see stories from the Bible. I see, to me, it seems as though they took a lot of mythology or other religions and kind of remixed it and just made it their own and to put in that Bible. And one of the questions that I have as an atheist is we don't really truly know who's the author of the Bible in those books, and a couple of books have been taken out and stuff like that.
Well, as far as some of the books, a lot of the books in the Bible, we actually do know the authors for a lot of the books, as far as who wrote the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, who wrote a lot of the New Testament. So we know as far as the authors are considered. Of course, I have also studied some of those things as far as where people make the assertion that the Bible seems like it copied some previous works of literature. And so I have looked into that as well. But I believe, I guess the difference between Christians and those who are not is that, we live our life in a context of faith. And so within that context of faith, even when we see certain things that may try to contradict the faith, because we live in the context of believing, why ever we believe, we see certain things, but we understand that there were always other religions before Christianity. Jesus wasn't a Christian. So we understand that. We understand there could be some lines. I mean, most major religions, they agree with everything up until Abraham. So we do understand that there is a lot of things that do kind of correlate, and they look like this and they look like that, but we still kind of hold on to our faith even though we see those things.
What do you mean by faith? Can you define that, please?
Well, faith is what I mean by that is my belief in Jesus Christ and the commandments of the Bible.
I have a question. You said that Jesus Christ himself wasn't a Christian, but the following religion that you're following now is Christianity. So I'm trying to figure out, and Jesus is one of the main figures in Christianity. And if he wasn't a Christian, then what was he? And is your belief similar to what he had, or is it? I'm just trying to get a better understanding.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, as far as Christianity, to be honest, the term Christian is something that I'm actually not too comfortable with, because Jesus did not establish the term Christian. It was actually established in a way of mocking the followers of Jesus. Usually when Jesus spoke to his followers, he either called them disciples or believers. But as far as Christianity is considered, Jesus was actually Jewish. In order to be, Jesus could not follow himself. And so Christianity is centered around following Christ and trying to mimic the standard that he set for us. And so since he was Jesus, he could not be a Christian. It's everybody who came after him who became Christians and followed him in his lead.
Okay.
But he was Jewish.
I actually seen a documentary where the guy was basically, he said the same thing as far as, he said something to the effect of, yes, that the Christians, the word Christian was almost like a derogatory term. It was like an insult back in those days.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely was. It wasn't something because when they say Christian, Christian is like Christ, and so it was basically almost telling people that they don't have a mind for themselves. They just see this man and they follow him. And a lot of the Jews in those times actually wanted to kill the Christians. Of course, calling it blasphemous, to suddenly start following this man and to depart from Judaism. It definitely was something that was derogatory.
So what was the religion? What religion would you say that Jesus Christ was following? Would you say it was just one that he had, like it was like he was a rogue spiritual person just out there doing his own thing, or do you think that he was like you said, Jewish or Hebrew, and and he was, I guess, following Abraham religion at the time? So I don't really know how to word it right. So,
Well, no, he definitely was Jewish. He followed the feast and followed the sacraments of the Jewish religion, but some people do consider him a rogue because he did challenge certain things that Jews believed at that time, especially things like the Sabbath day. So there were different things where the Jews looked at him and said, "You're not a real Jew." But he definitely was Jewish as far as him following the precepts and what we call obeying the law of the Jewish religion.
So would it?
Go ahead, James.
I was going to say, would it then, at that time, would you say that, especially if he was Hebrew, wouldn't it, I guess, instead of being Christians, people would be, follow Judaism or Hebrew religion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of them were followers of Judaism at the time.
Okay. I was just trying to get a better understanding.
Yeah.
Okay. My question was, why should the average person care about Jesus?
That's a loaded question for me, because I believe that the way, as intelligent as this world is, I don't believe that everything just appeared. I don't believe that, there could be a big bang, but I feel like there had to be something here before everything. There had to be somebody intelligent, some type of intelligent being that created everything. And the way I look at it, especially this is what kind of led me to my faith walk, is that I had to ask myself, well, what do I lose from serving Jesus? And so when I looked at his commandments and the things that were in the Bible, I said, well, I don't lose anything. And so I rather, if I'm wrong in serving Jesus and I die, nothing happens to me. You know, I sleep. That's why I believed at the time I just sleep and nothing happens to me. But if I'm wrong about serving Jesus, if I decide not to serve him and then I find that I'm wrong after I pass away, I risk, being in hell forever. And so, especially in looking at that, I said, well, especially after my experience, I felt like, well, something is going on. There's a reason why this man knew I was sick. There's a reason why he was able to tell me certain things. And so there's something real. There's something behind the scenes that I don't know about. I'd rather take my chances and serve God than to find out afterwards that I should have took my chances and then it'd be too late.
So you don't worry about...
wager.
Yeah, that's Pascal's wager, but do you worry about being wrong to other religions or other gods?
No, and I believe that comes primarily through my personal experience. Of course, my personal experience was somebody telling me I was healed, and he did it in the name of Jesus, and then I was actually healed. So I do not do that, especially I feel like I have a relationship with God, with Jesus. When I pray, I feel like he answers my prayers. And so just in my experience, I feel like Jesus is more real than people that I see face-to-face, day-to-day. And so in my experience, because I feel that he is so real, I don't worry about, well, what if there's another God? Because if there was another God, it wouldn't explain my personal experience, my personal revelation.
That's a good segue to something that I experienced when I used to go to church. I was a very, very avid Sunday school attender because I loved it, because it was a place where I could actually participate. When we used to go to the main service downstairs, I used to go to this church called New Vision Emmanuel Baptist Church in Miami, which is, I think, the largest Baptist church down in South Florida. So we had Sunday school upstairs, and then we go downstairs for the main service. So in the main service, it's the pastor and whoever's the guest that's talking. You don't get to question. You don't get to ask a question. You don't get to interact. So one day I asked my Sunday school teacher, I said, so when other people say basically the same thing, that their gods helped them, their prayers were answered, what would you say about that? Doesn't that validate what it is that they believe? And my Sunday school teacher basically said that it was our God that kind of did something positive for that person, and essentially that's basically, it's kind of like stealing credit. And I couldn't believe that he said that, because I'm like, to me, the same thing applies towards Christianity. They could just say that, well, it's our God that is being benevolent towards the Christians, if that makes any sense. So that's how I approach that situation, because I knew back then that there was religions before Christianity. There was a time when Jesus wasn't even born, if you want to add Jesus into the timeline. And there's other people that obviously are not even part of the Abrahamic religion, and they function still to this day. And a lot of them have their own testimony. And I find that to be very, very interesting when I speak to religious people, because I've spoken to Muslims, Catholic people, and so on and so forth. And they one of the reasons why they stay is because they get enough results when it comes to communication with their deity that it keeps them within the fold of the religion. And I find that to be really, really interesting. So I would wonder how you would approach that situation.
For me personally, I've heard that before. I've heard people say that, they almost passed away, and while they were in the coma, they saw, Muhammad, or they saw somebody else from another religion speaking with them. The same way that people would say while they were in a coma, they saw a figure who said he was Jesus speaking with them, or an angel. So I have heard, multiple comments about people that they've seen and why they believe it's real to them. The way I view it is that I can't judge them on their reality. Perception is reality. What you perceive is real. Our pain is usually not from things that occur, but it's the story of what we said occurred, and that's what makes us feel pain or suffering afterwards. And so I don't really respond to them as far as argumentatively to say, no, that's not true. It was really Jesus. Honestly, I take the approach of praying for them, because I used to think everything was luck. I had my own experience, and the way our faith is set up is that we believe that what's holding Jesus from returning is that he's waiting for the gospel to be preached to everybody, so that everybody can have an option, a choice, to serve him or not before he returns back for those who served him. And so I just pray for them. I encourage them, and I share my faith. And that's kind of the approach that I've taken, was to share my faith with people versus to argue against their faith.
Okay. Once again, everybody, you're listening to the Haitian Free Thinkers Radio Show. My name is Reggie. My co-host James is still on the line, and we have Alex with us tonight on a very special Thursday evening. We have about an hour left on available. If you guys have to go, let me know. I don't want to hold you, but I'm really enjoying the conversation. And if you're listening live, you can call in at 657-383-1619. Once again, that's 657-383-1619. And I have another quick intro that I'd like to roll, so let's listen.
Bonjour tout le monde, nom c'est Vanessa Charlot. Merci d'être avec nous dans l'émission Radio Libre Pensée Haïtienne.
So that's our friend Vanessa. She's in Haiti, and she gave us that nice intro in Creole. So we're talking a little bit of theology, a little bit of culture on the Haitian Free Thinkers Show. I have some more questions, but do you have any questions for us, Alex?
I guess I want to ask you, what made you decide to be an atheist?
I always say that the number one reason why I'm an atheist is because I actually read the Bible. And the 5-minute version of my story is that basically, I was born in Haiti to a Catholic family. We moved here in December of 1988. And at the time when my mother started to go to church, because, leaving Haiti to come to a new place, you wanted to kind of connect to the community. And so she started to go to L'Église Protestant, which is Protestant churches. And I remember noticing the differences because my uncle, Mono, introduced me to the concept of God when I was really, really young. I used to take Losti, which is the wafer communion, and he told me what God was, and so that concept stuck with me. So we used to go to Protestant churches. Eventually, as a young man, I used to go to different churches because I like to flun in. I like to go to see, compare, and to hang out with young people. But sometimes I would actually pay attention to what the pastor was saying. Most of my friends couldn't care less about the religion. They're just kind of there because their parents made them there. But every now and again, the pastor would say something. I'm like, wow, this is interesting. Or I would notice how the Episcopalians would do certain things while this other group would not do certain things, but everybody's talking about Jesus. Eventually, I personally gave my life to Jesus around the age of 16, 17. I took it very seriously, and I enlisted in the Army after high school to pay for college. 9/11 happened, and I found myself in Iraq. When I found myself in Iraq, I kept a New International Version Bible in my backpack, mostly as a good luck charm. But I realized that there's a really good chance I was going to die, and I really wanted to know what was going to happen to me when I get to heaven, because I really did believe that I was guaranteed a spot into heaven. And I realized that of all the time I spent in church and talking to Christians, they never really went into detail about what exactly happened for the next infinity. So I had spent a lot of my time writing to people and reading other books. And I said, you know what, I felt really bad that I'm not giving God, the time that I would give to women or other people. So I told myself that I would start reading the Bible from the beginning, and I started from Genesis 1. I stopped in Isaiah. I went back to the U.S. I asked to speak to my pastor, Pastor Ronald, and I was surprised that he wasn't as familiar with some of the things that were concerning to me as I thought he should be, because I thought a pastor really basically knew everything. It's kind of like, to me, going to a doctor and the doctor saying that, wow, I don't know what you have, or this is totally new to me, and I was flabbergasted in a way. But what happened was basically Pastor Ronald was more focused on the New Testament side of the house, and I was going straight through. And it troubled me to read about all the barbarity and the horrible stories that I read about in the Old Testament. But I kept reading, I kept researching. The internet was a great tool. And whenever I did find stuff like, the list of contradictions, which I think everybody who reads will eventually have to deal with, I still kind of tried to reconcile them. And after years of just reading, I was, like the Christians would say, I was on fire. I really was passionate. I was basically like a zealot. I was really, really, really into it. 2009, I met with some atheists, and I was like, wow, those are my people. That's who I am. Couldn't say that I believe anymore, because I knew too much. And but the short answer is I'm an atheist because I read the Bible and I researched it.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm still interested to find out, like, well, if we read the same book, if we're familiar with the same stories, if we have the same information, why are people coming to different conclusions? And not necessarily a binary case where, like, you're either a believer or not believer, but you have different denominations. The Bible is the only book that I know of, the only religious book that has two religions within it. I don't know any other religious book that has that situation going. I actually took my time to ask some Jews about Jesus and why they rejected him after getting the response from my church members. And the reason why they rejected Jesus is very easy to understand, and it's in the Bible. And I just find the whole thing just so fascinating. And because I was deployed in the Middle East, I understand how these stories and these themes motivate action. And I'm still very passionate in trying to basically reduce violence as much as I can, because a lot of believers are very much invested in seeing a future that is marred with violence in order to have different figures such as Jesus come back and I guess restore their earth to some paradise. So here I am.
Okay. Well, no, man, I definitely think that's interesting, especially with the different religions, all coming out of the same book. I believe a lot of that has to do with how easy it is for one to become a pastor or a teacher. I believe it has truly dismantled the Christian faith, because just about anybody can go online You pay $30 for a certificate and you are a pastor. Or you can just wake up and say, I feel called by God, I'm a pastor. And
right.
So a lot of people end up teaching things without literally understanding the context, the history, and those things are extremely important because if the Bible was written thousands of years ago, and it was in our belief, it's not written to us, but it's written for us. And so, in order for us to understand, what the writer was attempting to convey, we have to have some type of contextual background to understand it. And so, because a lot of people don't spend the time and the energy to actually understand the context, to look at the maps, to understand what the words meant in Koine Greek, at the time, I believe that attributes a lot to why there's so many faiths branching off. And even now, I feel like more faiths are being built every day, from quote-unquote the same Bible, but people taking a passage and completely taking it out of context. So it is a frustration, especially for people like myself who are speakers, because when I speak, I've already studied the Bible. I spent 3 years studying theology, but even if I'm preaching on a particular passage, I spend time looking into a correspondence. I try to understand what each word means. I look at the context of who wrote it, when they wrote it, what was going on at the time before I preach, because I definitely don't want to ever take anything out of context. But unfortunately, like you said, that is the case nowadays, and it has branched into many religions stemming from one book.
Okay. Context. Okay, so that's a very popular, response, and it is possible to be out of context, and I understand context. So for me, what's frustrating is when I deal with someone who is a believer of different backgrounds, and I'm explaining why it is that I don't believe in the religion or a particular story. One of the first things that they tell me is that I am out of context. So even if that's the case, one of the things that I find very fascinating and frustrating is that the person that's speaking they never make the same admission that it is possible that they are out of context and I'm within the context. So even if it's possible that one of us or both of us are out of context, it seems to me that the skeptic is almost always deemed as out of context. Will you ever run into that?
Oh yeah, of course. That's the thing, is that a lot of us don't spend time, because faith is really believing, and the teaching of Jesus, it says to believe without seeing. So where there is a plethora of facts, you don't need faith. So the reason why we need faith, we need to believe and trust, is because we don't have all the facts that we would like in order for us to just make a logical decision, well, Jesus is the only way. It does require a level of faith and trust because we lack some facts. And so as far as me, I'm not an apologist. I don't necessarily try to argue with people. If somebody asks me a question, I don't know it, I'll tell them, I'll research it. I'll look into the context myself versus just throwing out a generic answer, because you'll be surprised how many things people do in church even to this day that is still out of context from what the Bible actually asks, and it is a common practice in a lot of churches.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying it's surprising, and that's why a lot of people. There's actually a statistic. I believe it was 38% last time I checked in 2012. 38% of people who actually go to Bible college leave an atheist, because while they're in the Bible college and they're learning things, they're saying, "Why is my church not doing it the way, in context of what the Bible said?" So it is sad.
I think I know the answer, and I think it's because there's not one person, or I shouldn't say that with strong authority, but I don't believe that there's any one person that's actually doing what the Bible says or what the Bible teaches. I think what happens is people are doing what their culture says, what their culture is teaching, what their time is teaching. And this is what I mean for an example. So, growing up, I used to frequent Haitian establishments. And there's this famous church or this big church in South Florida called New Birth. And Victor Curry, I think his name is, Bishop Curry is the leader over there. And so me being the curious one, I went to visit Bishop Curry's church. And one of the things that I noticed is that they do this dance that only African-American churches seem to do. And I'm like, what is that? I don't know the official name of it. I don't want to say, a word that is not what it is. But they do this dance, and they throw money on the stage. They rub the stage. They do all kinds of things. And I'm like, well, this is not how we do it back where I come from. But I've come to realize now that it's literally like when I went to your church, your parents' church, it took me back to my days at New Vision. I can feel the Haitianness in the atmosphere, and it was both comforting and uncomfortable in that I'm an Americanized Haitian, so I gravitate more towards the English speaking and younger side, even though I'm 36 years old at this time. But I think the older Haitians who are used to the system in Haiti, they find it comforting to find something that's familiar, Bible notwithstanding. I don't think most people actually get into the minutia of the details of the Bible. A lot of people, I think, from my experience, are just there to kind of do socializing and get their, I guess, spiritual motivation for the week so that they can face whatever it is that they're facing. So when I start reading the Bible and I see how things are actually different from the original text, if you will, the actual Bible, depending on when certain people that got to me, they would have possibly persuaded me to be one of them. And I'm speaking to the Hebrew Israelite type of individuals who claim that they're going back to the origin of the Bible. But I've from my experience, I saw that they have their own issues as well. So that's my take on what's going on. And I really don't think that there's not one person, one religion, one denomination that's actually doing exactly what the Bible says. If there was, I think most people would be more Jewish than anything. But that's my experience.
Well, no, I mean, it's true what you say, actually. And this is where a lot of the division begins, because the thing about the Christian faith is that the Christian faith, especially the New Testament church, we're not centered on the law, per se. And so what that is that our faith gives us, basically there are commandments of God, commandments that we should live by. But then there are different things, like the way Jesus served is not the way Moses served. At one point in time, you have God telling Samson, you not to cut his hair and to be a Nazirite. And even in the New Testament, you see John the Baptist, who was a Nazirite, who had long hair. Later in the Bible, you see Apostle Paul, telling men that they should not have long hair and that would be a shame. So the way I look at it and the way that we're taught is that the commandments of God will remain the same forever. The things that God commands, they are always going to remain the same, but the implementation of those commands, they change from generation to generation, from culture to culture. I believe the American church struggles more than any other church, especially when I see people who come from Christian churches, like from Africa, or even Christian churches directly from Haiti. They are more solidified in their faith, I think, because we don't have all of these differing cultural implications that we deal with in America. I say it all the time, in my church, we have two cultures battling with each other. We have an Americanized where, our young people want to sing contemporary music, and then we have the Haitians with the Haitian culture who wants to sing from the hymnal. And it does cause a lot of friction because people's perspective on the Bible is oftentimes shaped by their cultures. The beauty is that the Bible gives us that opportunity to still be relevant to a particular group of people, but at the same time, I believe it does become dangerous where we are not following the actual commands that Jesus told us to follow. That's where I believe. So we could have different churches, we could have different styles, but when you're actually going against something Jesus commanded, or when you're coming against somebody who does something different than you, but it's not necessarily a commandment from God, that's where I think there's an issue.
Okay. Excellent. So we are coming down the home stretch of the show. Once again, if you wish to call in, the guest calling number is 657-383-1619. You're listening to the Haitian Freethinkers Radio Show, show number 76 with Alex Verneret, who's been awesome. So there's a revival coming up, so I wanted to touch a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about it, what it is, and your part in it.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah. Well, we have a revival where I am one of the guest preachers. It is a 3-day revival. Basically, what a revival is let's say that people's faith became dormant or passive. They do a series of services consecutively, night after night, just meant to kind of ignite the fire, ignite that hunger for God. And so I am privileged to be one of the guest speakers. I'll be speaking on Saturday at, I believe, one of the larger Haitian assemblies in Austell, Georgia. It's called Open Bible Tabernacle. And I'm speaking for their young adult ministry ranging from 18 to 30.
Okay. I think you guys have a theme each night. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, actually, there's a theme for the revival completely, and the theme is to always bring your A game.
Right.
And so it's just basically almost motivating people to give their best to serving God, give their best in life, and always bring your A game.
Okay. And what's the dates and times and the location again?
Yes, no problem. It's at Open Bible. The address is 2870 Clay Road in Austell, Georgia, 30106. The service times are at 7 p.m. nightly, starting August 12th to August 14th. There will also be a question and answer session. So if anybody, especially anybody who listens to this show, would like to come and ask questions, and that would be awesome. But that's on Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. Before the service that will be following at 7 p.m. I personally will be speaking August 13th, which is Saturday, at 7 p.m. And I will also be at the Q&A session.
Okay, awesome. Okay, well, you've been great, and I want to thank you again for coming to the show. James had to go, and I know that everybody's time is precious, so if you have anything for me, we can wrap it up. But I'm open to answering any questions you may have.
Oh, okay. Well, I definitely appreciate it. I appreciate, though we may not necessarily believe in the same things, I do appreciate you bringing people together, trying to start dialogue. I also appreciate you inviting me to the show, because that just shows how open you are to dialogue. I thoroughly enjoyed myself here, and I wish you nothing but the best moving forward.
Thank you. I recently became friends with Samuel, who is also supposed to be speaking at the revival.
Yep.
So I don't know how close you are with Sam, but if he can be on the show too, we can definitely do it again. Again, this time we didn't speak too much Creole, but je voulais parler Creole, je voulais parler de l'évangile, faire même bagarre là mais en Creole. Mais assoyant, li pat pase, but it's all good.
Yeah, well, anytime, n'importe là, you know, m'ka bay ti Creole moi, Creole la lou, mais m'ka parle Creole là.
Pas un problem. Okay, so yeah, talk to Sam. I sent him a message. Actually, no, I put him in the group. I put him in the Haitian Free Thinkers group. For those who don't know, if you're listening to the show, Haitian Free Thinkers is actually a group on Facebook. We have a website. We are on Instagram. We are on every major social network you can think of. So if you want to call us directly, I have a Google Voice number for you if you want to text, ask questions or whatever, which is 678-820-9474, 678-820-9474. But if you could get in touch with those people that you said that were atheists and are Haitian, that would be wonderful, because when I started, I just thought that I can find maybe 10. If I found 10, I would be very happy. But we have surpassed that goal, and it's a wonderful thing. And like I said, I thought long and hard about, what it is that we're going to do, how we're going to do it. And I've come a long way. So I want to have a more positive perspective on discussions and learn honestly and sincerely as best as I can, and keep having these kind of conversations. And like I said, I want to increase more, like I said, in Creole than in English, because there's a lot of resources already out there, especially on YouTube. So we're trying to have discussions where hopefully people can ask questions and learn, and have more of a library. And so hopefully, like I said, we could do another session whenever you and or Sam or somebody else that you know that might be interested can do it, and they can contact me or you, and we can set it up.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'll be sure to talk to Sam. I should be seeing him at the revival, of course, this weekend, so I'll be sure to bring that up to him.
All right. So with that, I say good night, and thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been the Haitian Free Thinkers Radio Show, and we'll see you next time.
I thank you. You have a good night.
Good night.
Run to Old Navy right now. All Old Navy Active is buy one, get one free 2 days only, today and tomorrow. That's right, your favorite workout wear is all buy one, get one free. Better hurry, it's just today and tomorrow at Old Navy. Valid 114 to 115 in stores only. Run to Old Navy right now. All Old Navy Active is buy one, get one free 2 days only, today and tomorrow. That's right, your favorite workout wear is all buy one, get one free. Better hurry, it's just today and tomorrow at Old Navy. Valid 114 to 115 in stores only.